Hey, we'll kick off, shall we?
Yeah.
Okay, Ray Bloomfield, welcome. So we thought we'd get you on because you lead a Business Builder program. And for folks that might know, the Business Builder program is helping SMB owners grow and scale their business. And the typical size for that business is anywhere from startup to that 3 to 5 million. And Ray, you're the leader of that. But what people probably don't know is your background. So I thought I'd give a little bit of an intro as to how I know you, if that's cool, and then just ask you some questions. And I think part of the reason of doing this is that when we work with folks, it is a bit of a transfer of trust. They don't know who we are. They don't know if what we do is going to work. They're not quite sure. So I think if we just let people understand who we are, that's going to help a lot better. So I was thinking about this last night. I used to say we've known each other for 20 years, but I got to say it's now 25, maybe 25 plus years. We were both in the police together, although I don't think our paths ever crossed. I knew your name, but I don't think we worked together. You then went and managed a Kmart store, which I'm really interested to chat about. And we did some promotional stuff because I owned gas stations back at the time. And I think I bought some TVs and push bikes off you at cost price or something. I'm sure you screwed me down. And we did some promotional activity with people. And then we just sort of kept in touch with people kept in touch with each other over the years, really. Over that time, you've owned a couple of Subway businesses, you've owned a cafe, you've been the general manager for a large national franchise group, you have been a practice manager in the veterinary services area, you've owned a flooring shop, you've owned an e-commerce store. And and here's the thing, for all those things that you've owned, you've bought them or started them from scratch, you've built them up and you've sold them. And that's really one of the things I want to get to. So welcome, really keen to hear what you got to say about yourself.
Thank you. I'll let you ask the questions because I don't want to say a lot about myself, but
Good on
you've
you.
covered it. Yeah, I give you 10 out of 10 for coverage
We'll
and
push the stop
quality of
button.
detail.
We'll push the stop button now, shall we?
Yeah, okay.
So tell us, how did you arrive at Kmart? So policing, and that's my background, way back, very structured and what have you. But you ended up managing a Kmart store. So I'm really interested in how you got into that corporate side of things, because that was probably your first foray into business. Would that be fair?
That would be fair, but in fact, you may not know this. When I was at school, I was interviewed by a person who owned a business, and that was a computer shop.
Right.
So at about 17 or 18, I moved into running a computer shop in Thames of all places. And so I've had time in business before I got into real business, and that's what started that. But I moved into Kmart and it was a journey. So it was a bottom of the heap journey. So they wanted a loss prevention officer or manager at Kmart in Hastings, actually. And I thought, well, that's probably me. So I applied and got the role. And quickly they saw that there was a little bit more to me than just looking after the loss prevention officer in the store. And I actually moved up to become an ad manager at Kmart Hastings. And then they changed some roles around and I became a loss prevention specialist for the New Zealand wide Kmart stores. And I moved to Auckland and decided Auckland was not the place for us. So there was an opportunity to go to a store manager's role in Hastings. So I ended up being a store manager, and that was a turnaround of about 12 months. And the great thing is, hey, look, I left the police because I retired early. It pretty much burnt me out. And the retail was quite different, similar but different, and there was much pressure. But the income was exceptionally much better than the police. So
Right.
I'd like to give them a tick for that. And yeah, so I started off my time as a store manager after about a year moving up. And yeah, a lot of the skills from the police transferred to business. And that was management of people, communication, setting goals, and getting stuff done.
And so Kmart would have been across New Zealand and Australia at that stage. Were you managed in New Zealand? Were you managed by Australia? Just how did that go?
Yeah, listeners may not appreciate this or viewers, but we were a district of Australia. There
Right.
you go. And that's a fact. So we get all these reports and sales, and yep, New Zealand was a district of Australia. It could be still the same. So, hey, look, we had back then, from memory, about 200 stores across New Zealand and Australia.
And when you first went to Hastings as a store manager, you'd worked there loss prevention wise, so you sort of knew the layout of the place. When you went there as a store, how was the store performing, and how did you find that whole cultural fit trying to come in and be inside an existing business but put your stamp on it? How did that go?
Yeah, that was interesting. So I went there because it was either you make it work or we close it down. And so, hey, I always love a challenge, and I was in my 30s then, and went there and had to basically build a team. And really that was about getting to the facts, talking to the people. I probably said a few things I wasn't allowed to say back then about where we were financially. It was sort of a bit of a cloak and daggers back in those days. Staff and team didn't really know about the overall activity of the business and how we were going other than sales. So I had a frank discussion, had them all in the meal room one day, and set the standard and communicated it. I would say led by example. I think I was in the stock room there once. At Christmas time, we were millions, multiple millions of dollars in those Kmart stores. And so we had Christmas stuff coming in. I think we had 100 pallets. And I went out the back there and I worked with them, and we put a timer on it. How quick will we break down the pallets? So leading by example was
And,
something that I've always believed in.
and where did Hastings sit when you first started managing the store? How many stores did you say? 200, was it?
In Australasia, I'd really just relate it back to the numbers in New Zealand. And back then, I think it was around 12, and I think we're probably 12th bottom.
And how long were you there until you left?
Actually, I would say, not including the other activities I was involved in, maybe 4 or 5 years.
And so when you left, where was Kmart? Was it still at that 12th position? Had it moved up? Where did it sit?
So different ways of measuring it. We were still maybe at the bottom quarter with income turnover, but as a performing store, we were over several years top in New Zealand, as in I would say just the profitability of the business. And in fact, one year, so Kmart had their conferences in the Melbourne Conference Centre in Australia, and all the stores, 200 odd together. And myself and one other Australian store stood up as the only people in that year to achieve all their KPIs. So yeah, we went from zero to hero, or was that dog to star?
Yep.
And yeah, and it was a team effort. So that just understanding the why we had to do this, and then the getting the team involved. And they were a high performing team at the end. They definitely they knew the good things and the bad things of the store. It was very spoken a lot. Had stand up meetings every morning at the gate before we opened the store, and just recognised and rewarded those that did well. And we had a few exited because they just weren't prepared to get involved and dig deep to make it change.
Just shows like turnover, as important as turnover is, that's not the only metric, because it's all around profitability and how you deliver, and then the people. I think you've mentioned before they had a pricing policy, good, better, best.
Yeah.
And I know that you've chatted to some of the business builder folks you work with about that. So just give us a really quick snapshot as to what the thinking is around good, better, best when it comes to pricing, because pricing for a lot of people is really difficult to try and hit that sweet spot. So how would you describe their good, better, best pricing policy?
So it was around probably house brand, and house brand was going to be good, and then the other suppliers would be better, best, and it was just to attract the customer in the door, to be honest, so we could promote a product that was a house brand like Pam's, I suppose, at a particular price, and it was usually the lesser value. And we get in the store. That was the whole thing. Get them in the store, and then as they shop, they would probably pick up a few more items, and they would increase their basket size. So that was a tool, good, better, best, to get them in. But also people shop differently. Some wanted quality, so it was just covering that range of people. But get them in the store. Once they're in there, hopefully they'll buy a bit more.
And do you reckon that principle applies to business in general? It's about leads, conversion, average sale, number of times they buy. What's your thoughts
100%.
on that?
Yeah, I completely agree. It's across everything. So if I go to the flooring, it was good, better, best. We'd have products that had less fiber in it, so you pay less, or the fiber was not nylon, it was polyester, and then you had grades from there. So I think it's across everything. TVs, I'd say the same thing. Harvey Norman, you can good, better, best. So yeah, and I think you got a wider appeal to a wider audience if you've got that range.
And if you look back on those Kmart days and the things that you learnt there, what do you reckon? So if you said there was one takeaway that stuck with you and that's helped you with all your other businesses over the year, because all your other businesses you have grown considerably, what was the one takeaway from Kmart maybe?
That's a good one. I probably would say that it takes a team to make it work. I learned that I couldn't do it alone because I was on the checkouts. That's leading by example. That didn't happen, I think, before I was there, that the store manager would be on the checkouts when we had lines, long lines down the aisles. So the team that work and basically bringing the team together when there's moments of pressure. An example was we had that large amount of stock come in the back door. That was just one example. And I would call all the staff off the floor and have a skeleton staff, and we would all do it together. So using the resources proactively and in a different way than probably they'd been used to as well. And I think I've taken that through, that we can together we can take the pressure points off if we work together on that particular project or task.
What's your personality type like? Because for a lot of business owners, they go, hey, listen, I want to build my team, I want to grow my business, but they find it hard to let go. They want to control and manage. What was your personality type like? And did that change over time?
I think I've always been someone that, yeah, I like to control things. I think Kmart taught me that, a big retail business taught me that I can't, and that I have to um, rely on and trust people to do their jobs. And because of the scale we were at, I could step back and I could see how each department was performing. So I had managers and then the team members. So I think it taught me to realize that once you trust and know the person has the competence and capacity to do the role, then let them do it and then revisit their performance. And we had a lot of check-ins. How's it going? Came up was great with data, had data coming out of ears, so we
Yep.
could see down to the how many bras were sold per day if we wanted to. So it was very handy to see the performance of each department and then speak to those department managers. And it was
It's easy to say, oh, listen, we'll relinquish control. But I know when I had my gas stations, I wanted to bring an operations manager in to manage the sites. And I don't think I had an issue with the control piece, but where I failed was I wasn't so clear on what my expectations were. I was just pleased that someone else was going to deal with all the headaches and answer the telephone and deal with the staff not turning up and all that side. So you understood you couldn't control everything. What about the communication piece? Looking back, could that have been different? Could you have done anything better?
I think the better could have been I was all results, and we got there, and there was some cultural change, and it was good, and we recognise a lot of people. But I think the better could have been more about understanding them as a person more and getting that engagement. Whereas I was all business. I had a job to do, and looking back, I think it could have even been better if we'd had more of a collective outside of the business side of things. But I was all business back then. You're rearing to go and wanting to get the results, and there was a lot of pressure. And I think people that work in big corporations know the pressure that I'm talking about. So there's not a lot of room to have a bit of fun.
And I think that's a good example, isn't it? Because we can read all the books, we can listen to all the podcasts about people and culture and team, but it's not until you're actually leading the team and leading a business. And again, if I reflect back, I know that I could have done things better in that space, but that is the progression of business or being in work. We just learn it as we go. Where did you go to after Kmart? What made you step away from Kmart and what was next?
I got headhunted actually, and headhunted for a CEO's job for a franchise group. And in fact, that owner was an ex-policeman as well. So he knew me. And I think the theme too is that you want to grab the good people, but you need to understand them too. You need to know them before you want to go into business with them. So this was that. This person knew me. And so the job was to grow the franchise, and we did. I think we were, I'm going to say less than half a dozen, and we ended up with 20 at the end of it when I left 6 or so years ago. So it was business, and it was the Kmart model was definitely a system, and we had lots of quality systems in the back end. And so the franchise was another stage, and it was different in that we had franchisees. So they weren't workers or team members, they were franchisees, and they had expectations on the franchise. So yeah, that was a really different, good, interesting development of my career, basically.
And then you had some Subway stores. Some, I think you had two Subway stores somewhere in there. Where did they appear?
So just one, and in fact, that happened when I was with Kmart. So me being my DNA is a pretty strong moral compass, I spoke to the GM of Kmart and said, "Hey, look, I really like Subway," and that was the deal. I bought the Subway because I love the food, I love exercise, I love keeping fit, and love the food. So they said, "Go for it." So it was a week over in Australia, and I've got my diploma still on my wall, a diploma in Subway. So Subway was in between Kmart, and then when I exited, Kmart was still there, and we did the Subway, and it was actually in Dannyburg. So it's a drive-through place, and I tell you what, people might think it's a bit of a little place, but we would have a busload of kids turn up, sports buses going from whatever to wherever, and there'd be 40. So you'd have to get on the line and really crank those things out.
So you were still managing the Kmart stores though while you had
I
that Subway.
was,
So
yeah.
so again, I'm guessing that you had to build a team there. You had to have people that you trusted to run the business. You couldn't be making the bread or doing the day-to-day stuff.
Yeah, I had a great team, family. I had family involved, so that was pretty cool. So I had a 5-year-old and out the back cutting tomatoes. They didn't have a knife. They had a little setup where you couldn't hurt yourself. So she's 28 now. So we had the family involved. They would be serving and making Subways, but I think my kids ate more Subways than they sold. And the protein, no wonder they're quite tall. And I'd say they're still pretty healthy, so that was cool. So
So how
Subway
do you
was,
think if in that food space now, because back then Subway was probably one of the main brands that were around there, there's just a huge amount of brands and different offerings in the market now. But do you think the things that make a good hospo or a good food business, are they still true today, or has the market changed, do you think?
it's changed completely. The competition is exceptional, and I don't think Subway's adjusted to the new world. And I think worldwide, I keep track on it, and they had something like 40 something thousand stores a few years ago, and they're down to 30 something thousand stores, still significant. The biggest, actually, Subway is the biggest footprint of stores in the world still, but they have lost a lot of traction, and now they're difficult to keep profitable because of the foot traffic. Pit, all those different offerings.
Where did you go to after Kmart and Subway when you finally made the transition, or was Subway? Did you leave Kmart, go to something else? Just tell us around that transition.
Yes, Kmart was great, but after 7 years and literally thousands of people in the stores a day, it definitely burns you out. And in fact, I moved to Palmerston North, and I ran their store there, which and had the same sort of result, but wasn't there very long, that we improved it. And it was a team effort. So I left Kmart and I had a bit of a break, and we ended up selling. Yeah, we do buy and sell, but we buy and sell because we can see there's an improvement to be made. And we've made improvements across all the businesses we've had and sold them for good multipliers. So we ended up buying a cafe, and I worked in that for a while. And the reason we bought that was because the Subway had a lot of good systems, actually phenomenal systems. And you have 3 pieces of tomato on a 6 inch, and 4 on a foot long, or 6, I can't remember now, but it was precise. And so we thought we don't have to pay the franchise fees, which was reasonable. We have our own business, and we'd use that same system set up in a cafe in Palmerston North. And in fact, it went extremely well, and we built that as well.
Were you still involved in the still involved in the franchise company at that stage, or had you left that?
No, I'd left that, and we actually no. Good point. That was a long time ago now. I was still involved in the franchise company and bought the cafe, had the Subway, now the cafe, and family ran that. And when I exited the franchise, I stayed in the cafe and, in fact, met you again or more as in the vet services clinic that you were the chairperson for.
Yeah, so I chaired through the introduction through you, ended up chairing for about 10 years, I think, a vet services company in the Manawatu, Wairarapa area. So that's where our paths crossed again.
Mm.
You were there for a period of time. You implemented a whole lot of systems and you were there as a practice manager. And then you ended up buying a flooring company or flooring store yourself. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so when I was at the vet clinic, got a call from the franchisor of the franchise that I was CEO of, and there was an opportunity to go to Hamilton and start up a flooring franchise store there. So that's what I did for the next 3 years.
Was there an
And
existing store there at the time, or were you
no, it was
greenfields?
it was a zero. It was a startup. I think we had 21 brands of flooring in Hamilton at the time. It was a big store. It was on Te Rapa Road, actually, high foot traffic, not far from the base there. And in 3 years, we built it to, I think, over near $4 million from zero to four. And again, the same process across that build as to others. Get the right people. I think hire for attitude, train for skill is something that I believe in, and get a good team. We had a few coming and going, team members, but yeah, that was that was probably the fastest growth franchise store in that history of that franchise. But it was a team effort again.
So you mentioned with the Subway and the cafe, and then I'm not sure about the flooring shop, working with family. And so family businesses bring a different set of dynamics than perhaps Bill and Mary do if business partners working together, but not in a personal relationship. How did the family dynamics go sometimes, working together, going home together, getting up in the morning together, just that whole piece?
Tricky. So I talk to even our clients now, folks, and one classic was in the cafe when I was still trying to be the boss, but the boss was not me, and it was my wife actually. And she put a piece of tape between the kitchen and the front of house, and I was not to cross over it because I was creating too much pressure in the back end by saying we're out of pies or we need some more of this and that. So yeah, it was difficult, and I have to say it worked for us as a team, but it's a challenge because the lines are blurred as to who's responsible, what you can say. The filters may come off a little bit more than if it was just an employer employee. So very tricky, but well worth it, satisfying. Having the family in the business as well, because they did come through several of those. My children, I think all of them could be a barista, or they were trained as a barista. So it was good to have that family connection.
When you opened up your flooring store, so that started from scratch. So greenfields, obviously capital intensive, I'm guessing, because you have to start from scratch. So from a funding perspective, we don't need to know the numbers, but how did you cash flow the business? How did you get it up? Supplier terms, payment terms with customers. How did you manage that whole cash flow piece? Because if you're growing from zero to say 4 or 5 million over a few years, there's cash to be dealt with. So how did you get on with that?
So we had some funds, which was fortunate, and yeah, it was a big premises. So the rent was, I think, $130,000 a year. So that was significant, and I think we needed to make a good $1 million or more to break even on that sort of number and staffing. So we had some funds. We borrowed a little bit more, but what happened? My background. I did some study through Massey and Victoria universities for some future studies. Didn't quite complete the degree, but marketing was my focus, and I used that to build very fast the customer base for that flooring shop. And I believe in marketing is critical to get scale, to grow, and to handle the millions of dollars. So we went from myself and a part timer to at least half a dozen staff and at least 15 subcontractors in 4 years. So yeah, it was just scale, pushing hard, working till 3 in the morning, getting the quotes out, but being in the market, whether that be radio, paper, other methods, Google, advertising, and so on. So it was just building that pipeline, working really hard, keeping it going, and then getting that traction with word of mouth. A lot of Google reviews, hundreds of them, believe in that. So it was just get the engine going and keep it pumping.
If I think about the folks I've worked with over the years, the time that stress normally appears and its issues, it's quite often centered around cash flow. Can't pay wages, I've got some exposure to the IRD, not sure how I'm going to meet my payables, the banks wants their money, that sort of thing. Did you have any challenges with cash flow while you were in the business? And if you did, how did you deal with that, both in a mental perspective, but also practically?
Practically very fortunate. I'm not literally, but I'm a machine when it comes to driving sales, and that's been one of my strengths. So we really didn't have any problems with income and paying the bills. It was keeping up was the biggest struggle. Literally keeping up with quoting, hence the 3 in the morning quoting to keep up with the demand. So came when we created a commercial division within that retail. So we started as a retail flooring business, and then we added another sales channel, which was commercial. And when we did that, we had many builders on board. So I think the split might have been retail to commercial was probably 70-30, which was a good split. But we had one particular big client basically fail to pay. And that was a massive mental pressure and stress on us. But because of our cash flow, and we were very cash flow positive, we didn't have a lot of debt. We were able to get through it. But one of the things that I will say is that the suppliers in the flooring industry were very supportive. And if you talk them up front and let them know what was happening, they were able to help you through some of those challenges. But yeah, mentally very draining, very difficult.
I think that's a really good point. And it's not uncommon for businesses to have challenges around cash flow at times. So it's having those conversations early with your suppliers and with your payables. The worst thing is when someone's sitting there waiting for payment to come. They're not sure if payment's going to come, and they might not have a robust process. So having those conversations early, seeing if you can maybe extend those payment terms to 60 days or something like that, but still talking to people. I think that's the key thing, isn't it?
I agree. I think we do put our heads in the sand because it's difficult. And I was on the phone, had a really good bank relationship, and we were able to get extensions and overdrafts. I believe in that. It's if you don't need it, you don't use it, you don't pay for it. You might have a fee, an admin fee, but it's there as a backup. That's a way of getting rid of some of that mental stress as well at times when you've got a bit of a backup. I've always had an ABC plan. What if this happens, what else are we going to do? What else are we going to do? And so we had plans in place to manage that. But yeah, fortunate that we could stay in business.
I remember, and I probably learnt this phrase early in my policing days, the 6Ps: prior preparation prevents piss poor planning. Is that right? Prior planning, like something along those lines. But I think doing the thinking, understanding what the contingencies are,
Yep.
talking to someone else, not just sort of try and solve all the problems yourself. And again, that's probably how I was when I first went into business. I thought that all the problems should be mine to solve. And I found that actually, if you get a few people around you that you can have that conversation with, it's a lot easier because 2 or 3 minds are normally a lot stronger than one mind that's spiraling down into a bit of a black hole.
100%. And I do remember a few times we had a conversations in different businesses, not a lot, but you were very helpful. And I think you made a comment to me a wee while ago. Well, if we got together as you, the advisor, and me, the owner, how much better we could have done. Well, I think you're probably right. We could have done a lot better. But hey, hindsight's a lovely thing, isn't it?
Did you start the flooring store with the intention to sell it, or did you start it to go, not quite sure where this is going to go? Let's just see what happens.
My modus operandi, MIMO, is always to build and sell. And I think I have a window of about 3 years, which worked. So it was always to build that capital. And that's what we did. It was to plan pretty much.
So you sold it. and then you got into e-commerce. We'll talk about that in a moment. Was there a transition? Were you still in the flooring store and you thought, I'm going to move to e-commerce? Did you sell the flooring store and then think, what am I going to do next? How did you do that transition? Because that's quite a change going from a highly intensive business to business, business to customer store with a whole lot of stock and moving parts to running an e-com business. So how did you bridge the gap there?
Yeah, that was interesting. So my son got involved in e-commerce and he saw an opportunity from not working hard like he was using the technology. And we were aware of the e-commerce business model from him. So when we were selling our flooring business, we transitioned to e-commerce because he was there to support, and he has to this day. So it was a very good progression. It was nice to have capital to be able to put back into a startup again, e-commerce, and it was mainly stock. It's not a high cost model. It's just basically systems, suppliers, and a place to store your products. No real people. A couple of us ran it. So it was a good transition, and it was way more relaxing.
Did you buy an existing business or did you start something from scratch?
Start up again because we had my son who's in e-commerce, still is today. He had the ideas, he had the processes, and it was just a matter of finding a product, which we did, that we sort of understood from previous experience. And so we got into that, and that was a success as well, and sold it again 3 years later and did well.
So you started with an idea, zero turnover, built the business, sold the business. You've had and then we've connected and kept in touch over the years. You've had quite a transition from policing to Kmart to food to professional services and the veterinary services to retail and then e-com. If you think back around all of those different things, if you had to think about, okay, what makes it easy for people when they're in business, or what should they be thinking of? What's your view about the secret sauce? What are the key drivers for a good business? Because you've worked across a whole lot, you've owned a whole lot, you've built them and sold them and done really well out of it. What do you reckon the key drivers are?
I think it's down to structure, systems, which, as we've talked about it, I've been through that. The police, very structural, very system focused has to be. And then the big Kmart, big box retailing and Subway and so on. So structure, consistency to market. So what the customer gets is consistent right the way through, which then develops a lot of word of mouth and good reviews, and having a plan, and I suppose knowing your why. Why do you want to do it? What's the plan? And being a good communicator with your team and building a good team, which had a few ups and downs, hiccups with people, but generally found the right people in the end. So I think those core things, and being very, very direct, very fair, and also facing your fears. There was many fears throughout my time. I think we talked about that a wee while ago. Fear in the police was paperwork, and my approach to that was, no, go head on, get as many jobs under your belt and arrests and things, investigations, so that you became really competent at it. So it's always facing your fears. If it's communication, well, how do you improve on that? So very basic things get success.
It just shows, though, isn't it? Business, sometimes I think we can overcomplicate business. We can use all these flash terms that are familiar, especially if you're new to business. We can make it sound pretty scary, but actually, regardless of what the business is, if you follow those key principles and execute those really well, then you get the result, don't you?
You do. And it is about people always. I think as I've learned in coming through to now, it is about people, whether it's the customer or your team or your suppliers. And it's about building really honest relationships with that whole ecosystem, which helps you grow.
What do you reckon Ray today would tell Ray 20 years ago with the value of hindsight and all the things you knew and the things that you did work and the things that maybe haven't worked so well, and at times you would have made what I call donations to the market, where you spend money or you try an initiative and it's a bloody waste of time. What would Ray today tell someone 20 years ago starting off in business?
There's not probably huge amounts of, hey, I've got to say congratulations on the success, but to be frank, the biggest thing I see is that have a bit of fun and enjoy the journey. Whereas I was always trying to get to the end. Enjoy the journey a bit more, because as we realize, we get older very fast and we have one life. So enjoy the journey would have been it only, and have a bit more of a connection with people more than I had. But hey, we got through it and we did well. But yeah, that would be it.
And I think that's the key, isn't it? That, and even for myself, the person I am today is not the person I was probably 5 years ago or the person 10 years ago. We're quite different. So you're now leading our Business Builder program that's working with SMB owners, so helping them grow their business. The principles that you work with them and the conversations you work with them, do you think that mirrors what you've done previously?
Yeah, I do. I really do. It's building a relationship. And I think probably our folks, the biggest thing is, I think you mentioned it yourself, is you've got to be able to work on the business. So to do that, you've got to build structure. And we have a really great plan thanks to you. And we have our 5 pillars, and we have a roadmap, and we build objectives, and we hold people accountable. So yes, it definitely is structure, systems, and then getting scale. I think that's the key, so that the owners can step back and work on the business. Because if you don't have enough income to hire another person so you can actually think about things rather than react to things because you're in it, then it's not going to be easy.
Yeah, I always think startup for business, and startup in my head is sort of 0 to 3 to 4 years, somewhere in that area. Startup is pretty tough, especially if you're bootstrapping it. You've got to put capital in yourself. If you're new to business, you're trying to learn what to do. So it is really hard in that first sort of 0 to 3, 0 to 4 years. But it's having that long-term view. And the view that I used to take is, if, well, I don't know everything, but I don't need to know everything, as long as if other people are doing it, I think I can do it. And I see that's what you try and impart when you're working with our business builder clients, is to go, hey, it's your guys' business, your folks' business, but your role is to help guide them through and just let them think about the different things that may occur, so they've been forewarned in a way.
Yeah, 100%. Planning is key. And we've got good content. We've got, obviously, between the two of us, we've got, at least, I don't know, 40, 50 years of business. And so that's worth something.
Come on, mate, don't crank that figure up too high, thanks.
Oh, okay.
Let's not do the math.
Okay. And anyway, well, hey, AI is great and I use it as well, and people are using it more. That's an example, but nothing beats the actual AI. Can't do it. It can provide you with a lot of content, but it is about doing. And I think that's where the experience comes in. So, and I think our folks, it's good to have someone to ring up and say, what do you think about this? And because of our experience, we can say, hey, this is something to think about. And
what's a good weekend look like for you?
Definitely exercise. Rotorua, one of the top 10 mountain bike tracks in the world. Recommend it to anybody that's listening if they want a good mountain bike ride. And walking the dog. I'm fortunate enough, I live by the beach, so a nice walk along the beach. That's me, just getting out and doing stuff.
Good on you, mate. Listen, I really enjoyed our chat. I hope for people they've got a better understanding of where you fit in and who you are. I've known you for 20 plus years now, and at different times, you're right. I remember when you were at Kmart, we did some dealings together. Definitely at the cafe, I remember popping in there. We worked together when you had the veterinary services practice. I chatted to you a couple of times when you were the GM of that franchise group. I remember having a few phone calls with you about your flooring company and the challenges that you were having. And now for the last 12 months or so, we've come together and built the PlanA Business Builder program. So really appreciate you taking the time to have a chat. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Good on you. Good job. Thanks.
See you later. Bye-bye.